Hello, and welcome to shooting great videos with your camcorder. My name is Gwyn
And I'm Bob Cartwright.
and together we'll be using this camcorder along with useful hints and tips to enable you to get the best from yours.
In the video you'll be seeing different sequences showing you how to approach different subjects and get the best from your camcorder. And at the end of each sequence we'll be showing you film that was actually shot on this camcorder straight off the camera, so you can get the confidence and understanding that you can achieve the same results. The only other piece of equipment we've actually used in making this video is the tripod that goes with the camcorder. We've tried to keep it as simple as possible to enable you to get the best possible results from your equipment.
We've tried to use the camcorder to illustrate most family events at which you're likely to want to use yours. And these include weddings, christenings, birthday parties, as well as family days out.
But first, before you use your camcorder, you've got to understand what the controls do and how the camcorder is thinking to get the best from it. So let's now have a look at a few basic models and see exactly what the camcorder is thinking.
Before we actually go out and start to use our camcorder, we really need to familiarise ourselves with the controls. Now these are the same on VHS, 8mm, SVHS and High 8. However, the more money you've spent on your camcorder, then probably the better spec you'll have. Now we have here a range of new and old camcorders, and I really intend now to spend a little bit of time talking you through some of the similarities and differences between them. So let's just take a look at this camcorder, which really is quite a basic model. Having said that, it's very easy to use. First thing that strikes you is this green feature here, this green mark here saying auto, which means what it says. It's automatic control of nearly all the functions of the camcorder. Now this includes things such as white balance, the iris control, the exposure, and really it's a very, very simple camera to use. If we just look at the top now, you'll see above the lens is a microphone, and in common with all camcorders it has a microphone, but on a model such as this it hasn't got an external mic input, so really you're relying totally on the input from this microphone here. Turning around to the front now, immediately under the lens is a date and time control, so if you've got a treasured recording perhaps and you want to make a record for posterity when you shot it, then in common with all camcorders you can actually insert this onto your picture. Immediately to the left of that we have an infrared control, so you can control it from an infrared controller. And moving around this side now, if we just take this down, you'll see we've got outputs here for the video signal and the audio signal, and also an edit switch, so we can perform some sort of editing from this machine as well. Very useful features. Just quickly moving back to the lens, this is no manual control on this lens, unfortunately. However, having said that, it's taken care of automatically, so you really haven't got anything to worry about there, as long as you're happy to rely on that. Moving around this side is the actual control of the zoom. There's a wide setting and a telephoto setting. And very useful here is a little flap which, if you just flick it around, actually hides the record button and might just stop you inadvertently starting recording when you don't want to. Around to the back now, and there's a slot here for inserting a battery pack. And immediately on the top, I just lift this flap up now, you have control over the tape transport mechanism, so you've got play, you've got search speeds as well, so you can just review your footage, make sure you're getting the material you want to get, and some very useful features indeed. But as I say, in common with many camcorders, it's a very easy model to use, fairly limited control perhaps in what you can actually do with it, but nonetheless, it's something I'm going to worry about too much. Moving on now, the next model up. This is the Video 8 format, and straight away you can see there's far more controls on the camcorder body itself. Just talking you through this now, we have, in common with the first model, a date and character title generator. Now, useful indeed is the focus here, which can be controlled automatically as in the previous model, or actually flicked over to manual control, so you can actually just flick the lever across and frame your shot, or even on this model set it to macro as well, so you've actually, by doing that, could be saving yourself some battery power, not a bad thing. Around to the front now, and immediately above the lens is a hot shoe mount here, so you can actually put a little light on top just to boost your pictures, just to lift them up that little bit, If you can't do that, of course, you can always move back to here and hit the gain up switch. This will actually lift your pictures, and if you wanted to, the backlight compensator switch as well. This means you can shoot somebody perhaps against a light background like a window, or even shoot up perhaps into the sky. So useful features indeed. The microphone again is mounted near the lens. Like the previous model, unfortunately there's no input for an external mic, but nonetheless very good at picking up sound. The actual control of the lens itself, the wide and telephoto setting, is set on the top, so it's quite easy to reach with your hand when you're filming. And if we just move to the back here, we've got the video and audio out again, once again. Onto the top now, the actual tape transport controls are exposed, and you've got the same controls on the previous model basically, and again it's just another model which illustrates just how the features can be usefully made use of. Okay, next is this model. Now immediately it might become apparent this is far more specified again. This is an SVHS-C format camera, so you're assured of shooting on a higher band format, and this should offer better quality pictures again. If we just take you across the controls here, we have manual control over the sound, so you're able to adjust the sound for the conditions you're shooting in, and the button here, which is marked full auto or across, means you've either got completely full auto control over all the features that were described on the first camera, or you can actually flick it across and it gives you absolute control over the white balance, over the iris, and over the focus. So really you've got a lot of absolute control over the way in which you're shooting the material. Moving now across to the lens barrel itself, just like the previous model, you've got a manual control and a macro as well. You've even got a little fade button here, so you can actually fade your picture to black, another nice little feature. And on the top of the lens barrel, you've actually got a little setting here which shows you what your focusing is. Now this is a hi-fi model, hi-fi stereo model, so the microphone on the front reflects this, so you see we've got a separation of left and right channels, and immediately underneath that we've got a little input here where we can just give it a pull. You can pull out the little mini jack there and put your own microphone in. So you might be able to run an external mic should you need to. Okay, that's that. Now if you move around to the side, again control over the actual zoom, wide and telephoto, and interestingly here on the side we've got the outputs, of course being stereo, we've got right and left audio channel outputs and video out, an edit control switch again, and a very useful feature indeed, a way of monitoring the sound by using an earphone. So the earphone output as well. Above that we've got a remote control, and above that again, because this is the S format, higher band format, we've got an S jack plug out as well, so we could run our signal if we wanted to another machine or to an S equipped television. Moving around to the back now, and you can see that we've actually got title again, so we can bring up titles, and if we just flip the little lid over here, you can see that we've got very, very sophisticated control indeed. We could, with this, have a digital frame store, so we could actually load in a title, say a title to put on the front of a piece we're doing for a wedding, for example. We've got the tape remaining button as well, so when we're actually starting to use our tape, we know exactly how many minutes we've got left on that tape. And again to the top, we've got the control panel here, which if we flick up is basically configured the same as the other models. All in all, this is a very well specified model. So what we intend to do now is to actually use this camcorder and bring you pictures live from it, so you can actually see on screen what the camera is actually thinking. Okay, well let's just talk our way around the actual visual information that you can see on screen at the moment. So, most obvious of course is the fact that there's an actual box in the middle of the screen. Well, this is actually the area that's indicated that the camera and the automatic focus is actually going to act upon. We can of course change this to a smaller size box, in which case it's just looking for the smaller part of the visual information to set a focus. So if I just put my hand in front, you'll see it's hunting around, and eventually it should come to rest on my hand. So there you go. Now of course this can be a little bit hit and miss, so another option you can go for is to actually engage a manual focus. You see we've lost the top line on the box, and so we actually are able to set a nice accurate focus for the scene. Right, okay, now if we move down here, you see we've got an indication here which is relating to the iris on the camera. Now at the moment, this box is empty, so it means the iris is actually fully open. Now if we were to, for example, move a bright light source into the screen, you'll quickly see that the representation shows us that the iris is closing up. So as a result, of course, the scene is becoming darker because of the bright light. Now, in situations such as this, you could actually override it by use of a manual override. In this case, you just move the iris apart, one stop, and so the light source isn't having such a marked effect on the screen. However, if I take the light away, you'll notice that my features, my tone, the flesh tones are actually overexposed, so we really need to go back down to normal. Right, moving up now, you see we have the record, and the record feature at the moment is in pause, and next to that we have a setting here, SP, well that's standard play. So at standard play on this tape at the moment we get 36 minutes, on long play, as you can see, just changed to 72 minutes. Okay, immediately above that we have the setting here which relates to the battery, so we just click it into record. You'll see it's just moving into record now, but the battery indicator tells us we've got plenty of battery power, which is a good thing to have. Right, moving back down now, you can see on this part of the screen, a little bit of information will come up which relates to the shutter speed. Now at the moment, the shutter speed is reading 1/120th of a second. Now this could be useful if you tend to films, for example, sports, events, or fast-moving action. And you can actually increase the shutter speed to 1/250th. And as I wave my hand, you can start to see, look a little bit more stroby, so, and the shutter speed's moving up all the time, 1/500th, faster action, 1,000th, and you'll see at 2,000th, and again at a 10,000th, the actual iris has actually had a job to cope with that, because of course the iris is having to open right up to try and cope for the extended shutter speed, and of course to film at that shutter speed you need to film under a lot more light, so it's best for outside shots in bright light. Okay, and now the light itself, if you just look at the bottom indicator here, it shows us that at the moment we're filming for indoor lighting, that's tungsten lighting, so we're assured now the colour tones on my face are normal. However, if we override that and set it for outdoor sunny, you'll see I've suddenly gone, well, it looks like I've been abroad, doesn't it? It looks, my face is nice and tanned. But we don't obviously want to have that on our screens because the colour balance is incorrect. In fact, colour balance and colour temperature is something that you can read up in most photographic magazines. Okay, well that's just a brief look at some of the controls on our camcorder and what they actually do. Bear in mind though that not all camcorders are similarly specified. Right, now for the fun part. Let's take our camcorder out and tell a simple story by the use of various shots.
The simple principle behind using your camcorder to tell a story is variety. Don't let shots last too long without good reason. Keep moving and experimenting with visual ideas. Look for new positions. Let's now actually look at the camcorder tape itself. Most of the time we start with a wide shot, which sets the scene and shows us where all the action is going to take place. We then move into medium shots, which introduces our characters and advances the story. A close-up or tight shot reveals emotions, characters and personality. Objects too become much more important. By varying our shots, using wides, mediums and close-ups, we give variety to our video and keep renewing the viewer's interest from start to finish. By not holding the scene for too long, we can make the story flow at whatever pace we choose by carefully, selectively pausing the recording on the camcorder. This whole sequence was actually shot in real time, and we have managed to tell a simple story which has a natural beginning, middle and end without jumps. Let's now look at these techniques a little more closely and see how you too can achieve the same storytelling ability.
Well, here we are in an outdoor environment. Indeed, if you're going to record family and friends, more often than not, you'll find yourself out just as I am now, and probably without a tripod. Now in this section we want to try and help you to avoid some of the fundamental mistakes which can impair the enjoyment of your camcorder footage and cause you embarrassment in the process. Now, one of the most important things to learn is the familiarity of the switches on your camcorder and of course what they do. And number one on our list has to be the on-off button. Now the result of not knowing when you've got your camcorder switched on to record, and vice versa, when you think you're recording something with the camcorder switch off, can be quite disastrous. Okay, Bob.
Good, good. Right, on to the next shot.
Righty-ho.
How are we going to go for this one? Can we go down here?
Why not? Yes.
Okay then.
Well, as you can see, that was very distracting, and of course in some cases could even be embarrassing as well. And don't forget that by doing that you're also draining precious battery power. Now another way in which battery power can be drained unnecessarily is by overuse of the zoom control on your camcorder. And of course, just like in our previous example, this can distract the viewer just as much. Now, a more practical way, of course, of using the zoom is introduced as we have here of me in a parkland setting, and if I were to move from this spot and actually start to walk, by pulling back on the zoom you can see exactly where your subject is. And fortunately, in this case, you can also see we've got a dustbin here, we've got my script notes lying on the bench, and also got a cable taking the sound from me at the moment. So really, we don't want to see those because it doesn't look very professional. A much more practical use of the zoom is to do what the professionals do. That's to disengage, if you have it on your camcorder, the actual control which is automatic, and manually zoom in tight to your subject, then perform a manual focus, and then pull back to the frame you need. As you can see, now I'm nice and sharp in the picture, and of course another benefit of doing it this way is it's a fast operation. I've been introduced into this scene by the use of the zoom. Of course, as you can see, the shot is a little unsteady, and that's because it's a shoulder-mounted shot. Now in situations like this, where you really need to steady a shot, you should make use of available props, in this case a tree. Now if I just put my weight against the tree and the camcorder, I've immediately got a much steadier shot. And unlike the one you're looking at now, it'll be much more enjoyable to watch later on. Of course, you haven't always got to shoot from your eye line, so let's get a little bit lower down. Again, just your weight against the prop, and your shot has improved a lot. Of course, we don't even have to leave it there. We can actually sit down on the ground, use your body, in this case your elbows against your knees, to steady the shot. And I'm sure, even though my shot is more or less rock steady, I dare say the one you're looking at has a long way to go before it reaches that. And again, we just change the way in which we hold our camcorder, place it between our knees, we can get a really low angle shot, and this of course is great if you're filming the kids. Immediately, as you can see, I built up a whole library of shots in which we've actually used available props. So let's go and have a look now at other props we can use. All these hints and tips should improve your camera technique when you're next telling a story, and will help to avoid you committing the biggest sin of all, known affectionately as hosepiping. As you can see, this is a random mishmash of shots, random zooms, focusing, then whipping around trying to get the next shot. You haven't got enough time, so whip around again. In fact, an absolute disaster and to be avoided at all costs. And we have the other end of the scale. Now this is where the camera is locked off and actually fixed, looking at one scene. Now at the time, you might have activity running through the scene and it seems okay. But if you're using the on-off switch, and the people might have moved between each time you've run the camcorder, you have what we call a jump cut. And when you come to view your footage later on, you'll notice some very, very interesting and probably unwanted results. So let's just briefly recap on what we've learned so far. The first point is not to overuse the zoom. Point number 2 is to try and keep your shot steady by use of available props. Our third point was to try at all costs to avoid hosepiping. And the fourth point was to avoid jump cuts, which leads us to our fifth point, and that is to try, whenever possible, to vary the angle of your shots as much as possible. Now, although the camera actually changed its position, after a while the scene became a little bit tedious. Let's run that once again, using this whole area, but this time our cameraman will alter his position and add more interest to the shot. First shot, a wide establishing shot, showing where all the action is taking place. Next, a medium shot, which introduces the character and from a slightly higher angle to add perspective. Third, a wide low angle, using the bench to add depth. Fourth shot, medium close-up, shooting through the rungs to add interest. Fifth shot, again a low angle wide, using the object on the right to lead into the frame. And finally, a low angle shot, which gives the object prominence.
So we've been through the do's and don'ts now on how to use the camcorder to get the best possible shots and to change and vary your angles to try and help the story go together. Well, as you can see, we're actually at our first family event now, which of course is a wedding. You probably bought the camcorder for either weddings or children or both. And it's important to put a whole sequence of shots together to try and tell a short story. Now in this case, we're obviously not trying to be the professional camera crew. You'll see them in the background being very, very busy and very, very active. The objective of the exercise is to use the camcorder to take a, say, 3 to 5 minute piece, which actually captures the mood of the day, people's reactions, and the family fun. So, let's go and shoot our first wedding. You'll notice I'm not using a tripod, by the way. Everything's going to be handheld, so I've got to make sure I concentrate on my supports all the time. Here goes.
We start with our establishing shot, which in this case is a low angle one. We then begin to introduce characters into the scene. We do this by moving around the church and trying, where possible, to use a prop to steady our shots. Remember to keep your eyes open at all times, for individual images of importance. And don't forget to vary your shooting angle to maintain interest. In the case of a wedding, there is a lot happening in several different places at any one time. And it's a good exercise in storytelling if you can pace yourself steadily and capture all the important moments that go to make up an event such as this. The day always passes all too quickly for the happy couple, so it's really up to you to capture the key moments which they will want to see for posterity. Let's now look at the actual footage from the camcorder, complete with live sound.
You went.
Well, here we are, another typical situation where you might have occasion to take the camcorder out. I've got the family along with me, and we're going to take a walk along the riverside. It's a beautiful spring evening, but unfortunately the sun will soon be setting, and we really want to make most use of the time to us. So I'm not going to take the tripod, that's just another thing to carry. Let's just use our camcorder and take some nice shots.
The same approach is being used in this example. The first shot is a wide-angle static, so we set the scene and establish our location. By moving our position and varying the shooting angles, a logical sequence builds up of the walk along the riverside. Using a variety of natural props, we are guaranteed a series of stable images. As the subject matter is fairly static, we can take our time to look for new vantage points and give our video a creative edge. We can also introduce natural reference points for scale and texture. Every story has to have a beginning and also an end. So the same attention must go into this final shot to conclude the video in a pleasing way. It's magnificent scenery, isn't it? And the object of the exercise today is to take the camcorder and a handful of basic equipment and capture the scenery and the mood of the moment. Now it's an early spring morning, as you can see by the intense sunshine, and it's not very warm, as you can probably see by the clothing that I'm wearing. And so there are a number of things to be wary of when using your camcorder in this environment to get the best out of the equipment and also get the best shots. So let's just go through a few of the basics. We have the camera, obviously, we need that. Now you'll find that when you take the camera out of a warm environment into a cold environment and vice versa, you may create dew or moisture inside the camera equipment itself. Now it's electronically protected against doing anything unless the camera is warmed to its environment. So you may find that it takes a while for the camera to acknowledge the fact that it's warm enough to work in either environment when you're going from warm to cold or cold to warm. Because it is fairly fresh, fairly cold day, another important point is the battery power. Now what you'll find is that batteries will diminish in their power very, very quickly in a cold environment. So if at all possible, what you need to do is keep the battery warm, and usually the best place to do that is in your pocket. But the colder the environment, you'll find the battery really does run down very quickly. Another thing before we start is the lens itself. When I take the lens cap off, you'll see that the lens is in fact misted up, again down to the moisture aspect. So we need to make sure that we've got the right equipment to wipe that off and clean that properly, and the same goes for the viewfinder as well. Now, what else am I taking with me? Well, we're trying to keep this as simple as possible so that, if you've just bought your camcorder, you're going to get the most from it. Now, to protect the camcorder, rather than the stiff box that it came in, I've purchased a soft bag, which just takes the camcorder, keeps it warm, protected, and so on. And in my bag, I've just got a spare battery, which again I'll keep warm in my pocket. I've invested in a mini tripod, which is useful for if we're going to do macro and close-ups and so on, close to the ground, and you'll see that in operation. A spare tape in case I get carried away and want to shoot more and more information, and of course a good old sturdy lens cleaner to get any bits that may get blown up from the grass and so on into the lens. I've also got a lens cloth as well in my pocket. In addition to that, I've got the larger tripod as well, and again in this sort of environment when you're shooting a film, which in this case is the intention is it to be 3 or 4 minutes long, some general scenes, capturing the environment, capturing the weather, capturing our surroundings, it's usually best to have nice, steady, static, locked-off shots, and those are shots which are shot on tripods, obviously. You may be able to hear over the microphone there is a lot of wind, a lot of buffeting around at the moment, and correspondingly when you're standing on top of a hill holding a camcorder trying to shoot a scene, you'll find the wind moves you around. So it's a bit of common sense really to try and make it as steady as you can. If you haven't got to the stage of affording tripods yet, then the best thing to do is keep the camera and hold it between your knees on the ground, but we'll cover that some other stage. The piece that you're about to see is the actions that we went through. We're going to have a lot of problems to overcome as regards exposure and the white balance and so on, because as you see it's fairly intense light, so when we're doing close-ups on the ground we'll have to adjust the exposure accordingly to take that into account and get the best possible picture. Now because the microphone on the camera will be picking up a fair amount of wind noise, we will be replacing the soundtrack using the audio dubbing facility on the camcorder with a piece of nice, gentle, soft music, and at the end of the sequence you'll see that all put together. So I'm about to pack it all away and go start shooting.
On this occasion, we're taking our time to shoot the video. We've brought a tripod with us, and as you can see by the shadows, we've started early in the day. Time taken to set the tripod up correctly and level it using the built-in spirit level pays dividends. The result is nice level horizons. When you're on a slope, as we are here, always have 2 of the 3 tripod legs at the lower point, adjusting the legs accordingly. Once again, this gives us more stability in the shot. Once the tripod is level, we need to insert the base plate into the bottom of the camera, and some have a locating pin to stop the camera from rotating unnecessarily. Batteries that are kept warm always last longer in this cold environment, so you need to ensure that you put the battery back into your pocket after each sequence. Most camcorder lens caps have a little clip built in that allow you to fix it to the wrist strap, thus preventing it from flying around or you losing it. Always keep a lens cloth handy in your camcorder box to clean both the lens and your viewfinder. Once the camcorder is stable, on top of the tripod, we need to switch off the autofocus, which is easily confused by the distances between the foreground and the horizon. We're now ready to start capturing our images, and if you allow yourself the time to make sure the camera is steady and the composition is pleasing before you press the record button, you're guaranteed a fine, varied selection of images. Lens flare washes the image out completely on video, and most lens hoods need assistance in keeping the lens in shadow. If you should ever use a mini tripod, hold the center column very firmly, as it was probably designed for a small photographic camera and not a video camcorder. Let's take a look at the actual camcorder tape from this day out.
So let's now recap on the main points we've covered in this video. Firstly, variety is the spice of video life. When shooting children, get down to their level and see the world from their viewpoint. Run a series of shots together which indicates the child, their activity, and any subject they may be involved with. Remember how a series of wide shots, medium shots, and close-ups can add interest to your later viewing. Try to keep the shots short and punchy, although always be ready for the child's natural reactions to their activity. When shooting birthday parties, once again, get down amongst all the action. And try not to let your lens cap fall into the trifle. Children make natural subjects, and unlike adults, feel no embarrassment with the video camera. In christenings, try not to be stuck in one spot. This shot shows how boring this scene can become. Once again, think variety and get reactions from all members of the family. Try to avoid jump cuts, as this is visually irritating. Use a tripod when you will be doing a lot of telephoto work from a distance, such as a children's play, etc. When you pan or zoom, make sure it is for a good reason. Remember not to use your zoom lens like a hosepipe. And finally, you bought your camcorder to capture magic moments. These times disappear all too fast, so whenever you can, make sure your batteries are fully charged and you have a blank tape handy. So there you have it. We hope this video will enable you to get the best from your camcorder.
In the next volume, we'll actually take these basic techniques a stage further, and by the use of peripheral equipment and some advanced knowledge, show you how you can make your production that little bit better.
So until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.